Welcome to Share Future Voices, your fortnightly fireside chats with industry experts, thought leaders, and pioneers exploring the future of consumer insight, brand marketing, AI, and technology. In today's episode, we're sitting down with a very special guest, Tshedza Magugumela, ex-community engagement manager at Airbnb, Middle East, and Africa. Tshedza builds communities for a living, with a growing track record managing communities at scale, playing his part in creating environments and moments where people can find their sense of belonging through connection. His love for community landed him a job at Airbnb, and he has previous experience within the co-living and co-working sector, as well as in the global membership clubs space. Whether hosting socials and networking events for digital nomads, chatting with hosts around Africa, or curating his City Connections social festival in the summer, community is at the center of everything Tshedza strives to do. You're in for a treat with this episode, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this one with Share Future Voices. Tshedza, thank you for being here on Share Future Voices.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Winter, so just trying to keep the energy up in the cold.
Yes.
But other than that, it's second half of the year, so really just looking forward to what's coming up next.
Amazing. And look, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I think when I was looking for speakers, particularly around community and community-powered brands, you are just such a natural in terms of who do we talk to. I think your experience with neighbor goods, absolutely amazing. I've seen you at events and I've actually seen how you've built something that pretty much was from nowhere to somewhere that's gone global. And of course, the work you did at Airbnb. I mean, you are someone who, when I look at the dictionary and I look for community-powered brands, it's just natural that you come up. So thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thanks for the kind words. It really means a lot. I haven't thought too deep about what that experience has been like, but really I can agree on some of those points. I think it's been a fun ride, and I'm glad you've been able to see kind of front row what that's looked like. So here we are.
Amazing, thank you. So I guess I'll dive into our first question, which is, what role does community engagement play in effective marketing strategies today?
That's an interesting one. I think the main thing about community management is that it humanizes your brand, essentially. Not every brand has community or needs community, but for the ones that do, or for the ones that are looking for it, it really is a chance to create a personal space between your audience and your brand. Looking at kind of how it becomes an effective strategy is that you're looking at the long-term nurturing of this community. So you as a brand are then looking to build kind of that long-term relationship with your customers, and then of course create these moments, whether in person and virtual, different touch points where your audience or your community has a space to grow.
Amazing. And I mean, look, Airbnb, first of all, wow, a brand that also, they remind me of Uber, right? They aren't exactly a store that's physical that you go to and be like, hi, please book me this accommodation here. It's not physical. It's not a product that I go to a supermarket to go buy. It's essentially a piece of tech. And you being part of something that really has just expanded globally now, during your time at Airbnb, can you just share a light bulb moment and, in essence, an example of a campaign where community input and engagement really significantly influenced the outcome?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you were right. It's a piece of tech, right? So with some of these tech companies, they remain kind of faceless. And as consumers, that becomes a little difficult when maybe you have customer service issues and it never feels like there's actually anyone that's there. And so I think where Airbnb does it really well is we have what we call the host clubs program. And that essentially becomes the community hub for people, hosts to interact with hosts, kind of have that peer support network championed by local hosts who knows better than hosts, not even us sometimes. And so really looking into those communities, opportunity for hosts to make a wider impact. Without them, there is no Airbnb. you asked about an example. I think what I was able to see more like the beginning of the year, I oversaw the Middle East and African region, and there was heavy like policy regulations happening in Kenya, where different government agencies are coming in and they're putting in different tax regulations and short-term rental regulations that really go and impact how people are able to do business. And so those host clubs were able to mobilize through the help of community leaders, so really empowered hosts in the community who then go and get other hosts. They share their ideas, they share their thoughts and feelings about these regulations, and then they go and engage with the authorities directly, and really go and look at it like a civic engagement kind of opportunity. And who better to speak for hosts than hosts themselves? I think just seeing how those authorities were able to come to the table with hosts on a one-to-one, quite personal level, and then go and look at how they can work better with them to come out with favorable outcomes. You look at some of the recent news with Kenya and the different tax regulations. I think it's working, not just from a host side, but in general, business leaders and different people in the space. That was really like a super impactful moment where you really saw people lending their voice to a problem and then at the same time coming with a solution, which I think in that instance is the real essence of community, because just like your neighborhood watch, you would hope that, okay, if we're going to bring problems, let's come with solutions as well.
Absolutely.
And the hosts were quite empowered to go and do that, and I think it worked very well.
Amazing. And I mean, Airbnb, your Ubers, global brands, right? Versus there being all these tiny pockets of communities in different countries where, like you were saying, in the Middle East, there's certain regulations people need to abide by versus South Africa, let's say, where it's going to be completely different. How do you navigate, a global brand still resonating with those pockets of local communities?
I think it's always a challenge, and I know we'll get to some of the challenges later, but it's really about, okay, who are the people that are in front of your community? What are you sharing with your community that's really localized? I think the localized approach is always the best because it's relevant. There's no one size fits all. At a company like Airbnb, what is relevant for American hosts is not relevant for South African hosts. And so looking at how can you just go deeper, how can you personalize, how best do you understand your community, how much are you listening to them, and in turn then what value are you then providing back, whether it's assistance, whether it's content, whether it's resources, how can you then go and further impact whatever it is that they're doing. So in the Airbnb sense, definitely how are we helping hosts to stay up to date. We look at those host clubs as like a real hub of excellence, so to speak, because of that peer sharing. And then of course you're relying on that kind of education of the community members and their knowledge to then share with each other as well. We're not on the ground everywhere, and so we really rely on those hosts that are in the spaces on the ground, really involved in the community to then add that value as well.
And speaking of keeping up to date, right, it's AI, it's tech, that's the big talk right now. And so how can you, advise brands to foster authentic relationships with their audience and communities within a digital space like the one we're in today?
AI, very interesting space. I think, we're starting to see AI, of course, creep into all sorts of industries. Even you might have AI in your grocery apps. And so looking on a community's sense, I think it works kind of, there's a whole wide range of options, but if I have to think of maybe two off my head, looking at how it can impact your customers and then your from the brand side as well. I think from the brand side, it really gives you an opportunity to get deeper knowledge into your customers or about your customers or your community. Looking at things like social media listening, there are companies like Meltwater, for example, that do that really well, media intelligence, but looking at how it can be strategized around what people are saying, when they're saying it, and then being, kind of reactive or even better, proactive about some of those those conversations. And then from the community side, the member side, what are they interacting with on a day-to-day basis? So again, community looks different to every brand. If we look at a newsletter, for example, how relevant is that newsletter to you versus to me? What kind of content am I seeing versus what you're seeing? How personal is that kind of relationship being built? So I think AI is really going to kind of streamline and make those kind of processes super efficient. It's obviously all about the data. So what kind of data and what kind of insights are we getting from our community? And then how does that impact business decisions, brand decisions, marketing campaigns, anything, we could go on and on about it. But I really think that, of course, with great power comes great responsibility.
Not you quoting Spider-Man.
He's my idol.
Well, he's our country, Spider-Man too.
And so, looking at how can that data be used, in a safe way, in an efficient way, and of course, I think for me personally, how can it bring value on both sides?
Amazing. I guess you kind of touched on it really in this answer, but just again, in asking, what do you think of AI and more specifically its role in creating community engagement?
I think it's interesting. I personally, and this is just my opinion, I feel that community engagement really has to have that human element. Now, if we can get AI to the point where it's hard to tell, and I know it's getting there, you might have a winner. I think where it can assist in, we as community managers, we definitely want to be at the forefront and in front of those communities, but definitely where it can assist is helping us, understand a few more prompts, maybe to post the community, looking at different metrics, what kind of content is being engaged with the most. I know negativity sometimes sells, and you might see a lot of traffic on kind of the worst topics, but looking at how can we leverage AI then to help us understand our communities better. What are they saying? What are they interested in? When are they interested in it? And how is that being delivered? I also think the platform in which these communities exist is super important. And so, AI will work, in different ways on different platforms for sure.
Amazing. Yeah, we love AI today, don't we? I guess someone in marketing too, I'm in the same boat. I love how it's been helping me be more efficient. I love that it's helping me in content creation and generating new ideas and ways of thinking. At the same time, I'm also, like you said, there needs to be that human touch. There needs to be that human. You can tell when something's robotic when you read it versus when a human has said something. So I'm in the same boat, basically. Thank you, Spider-Man, for great power comes great responsibility. Right. Now, you did touch on it and say I was going to ask the dreaded question, but I guess the question around common challenges. So what are some of those common challenges you believe brands face when trying to engage with their community, and how do you think those brands can kind of overcome or mitigate those challenges?
I think one major thing is not meeting your community where they are. So, if you're seeing that, wow, on TikTok, we've got a really, great audience, they're super engaged. How do you meet them on TikTok? Why are you trying to get them off platform or away from where they are? I think as well, another challenge is they're not meeting them in the most efficient place as well. So you could have a great Instagram following, but that they're going to engage well through newsletters because Instagram might not actually be the space where your community needs to exist. How are you also then closing that loop? Okay, you've built this community, what for? What is kind of the value proposition of your community members belonging? So looking at different ways of, it comes from understanding your people, first of all, and I think that goes hand in hand. You get that community because you understand it, hopefully. And so, looking at ways to overcome it, I think just being intentional. Community is, I always say, it's built, not bought. So you can't just wish it to be there, it has to be built. Nowadays, of course, you're looking at kind of more of these upstart brands and their founder-led stories, and the great saying is that people buy people, not brands. And so really having strong advocates for your brand helps, because we're all kind of aspirational. So when you have those community leaders, whether they're influential people or just really strong customers who are able to speak on behalf of your brand, it's a good starting point to kind of overcome those things.
Amazing. Touching on what you said, that there are like those faceless brands that exist, right? Like I don't have a clue who sits on Ubers with, I don't know who the CEO of Uber is, versus I know Tim Cook, we know he's Apple CEO. So I guess that balance of like brands who are faceless, knowing, like you said, people buy into people. How can, just if you could just put a mic, speak to those faceless brands and go like, yo, people buy into people. Here's one thing you could do today. What do you think you'd say?
I think for me, the biggest thing is creating an experience, right? So if you look at an Apple, for example, we know that when a product drops, when the new iPhones come out, they tie that to an experience. There's a whole launch day around it, either at WWDC or on, launch day, you go to the iStore, there's cheering going on. At Airbnb, we, empowered our community leaders to have meetups. And so that is where the community gets to engage with each other. I'm a big fan of Cultish, the local brand. And so, we can all gas them up in the Instagram comments. But what really makes the most sense is when Cultish, for example, has a First Thursday event. Now I'm seeing other people wearing Cultish, and that's where the community comes together. Experiences are becoming more and more of a thing. Spaces where people can connect are becoming more and more of a need, especially post-COVID. And so, my one biggest thing would be try and create an experience, especially for those faceless brands, create an experience for your community to then come together.
Man, this is why I'm so glad I had you on the podcast, because one, you're dropping gems, but I think you've just touched on something really not only relatable but relevant to right now. We're in a post-COVID world, so we should be getting back to that place where we can go out now and connect physically. There are brands I've seen who kind of still, talk about like COVID and they can't do X, Y, Z, and it's like, but go back to the experience, right? The world is moving, tech is evolving. We're able to connect again and come together both online and digitally as well as offline. And how can you do that? Absolutely experience. Personally, I love it when I go to the nice store to go buy my iPhone and everybody else is as excited as I am because we know the drop was yesterday. I love that. Like, it's a random experience, but it's an experience nonetheless. So gems are being dropped. If you have not subscribed yet or followed our podcast, absolutely do that now, because Tshedza is dropping gems. Dropping all the mics. So I guess let's talk about the future. How do you see the future of community-driven marketing evolving over the next few years?
So I think we touched on a couple of those things already. Definitely AI, looking at how that gets integrated more. One thing that I'm really keeping a close eye on is, some of these smaller brands and then really zeroing in on that experience. So for example, if you look at a brand like Bandit, which is this running, apparel brand, they've opened a space in the US, which is essentially a community space for people to now come and connect. And so you're going to see a lot more brands bringing their communities from online to offline. But then also, different industries require different spaces for the community. So looking at the gaming industry and, crypto and Web3, having channels like, on Discord. I'm part of a Slack group of community managers. Reddit is still, relevant as well. So really looking at how are we starting to segment, where these different communities live on different platforms. And then, of course, like I mentioned, tying that with what is the experience, what is the value add. I think you're always looking at, okay, if you have people that are part of your community, you're hopefully giving them more value than their purchasing power, right? So looking at ways to then, entice them, I guess, exclusive access to either events, information, really looking at how can they play a role in the development of your brand or your business. So whether it's feedback on product, or being able to be part of like thought leadership when something is coming up, or having them be the voice to represent you in Congress, for example. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more advocacy at times, but then also keeping those community members super engaged and active.
Absolutely. Do you think there's anything that might fall away in the next few years?
I don't know, to be honest. I think it's always evolving, right? So, I mean, we're talking about digital, but I find that a lot of these things happen through word of mouth, which is like going back to super traditional kind of marketing. And so, it's going to be a revolving wheel. The bootleg jeans always has a life cycle. And so I feel like it's going to be like that as well with community, at least the way I see it. So, what might fall away, hopefully there's not every brand looking to have community, because it really doesn't have to be like that. And it's not made for everyone yet. But I think it's going to be something to watch. It's going to be something to watch for sure. I'm happy to not know what's coming.
Right, there's novelty in the unknown, the mysterious, let yourself be surprised. But I think at the same time, absolutely, I'm also aware that not every brand needs a community, understandably. I think in this day and age, social media is kind of doing that for you also. I guess speaking on that, social media creating these communities, armies, Beyonce's got a Bayhive. She never told us to come together and let's be a Bayhive. Do you think brands should continue to foster, take a look, keep an eye out on those social media generated communities and let them flow? Or just, kind of have a hands-off approach and let it just naturally, authentically grow and evolve?
I think it's a mix of both, right? So you obviously want things to happen organically as best as possible, and then taking what's organic and giving it more of a space, right? So if you look at the Bayhive, right, they probably started just online, people coming together, and then what? Beyonce's probably got a newsletter, she's probably got a fan club, somewhere where these people all live, in the same space, and it's just them. And so, I think it's a mix of both. Listening is definitely going to be the big thing. You want to know what people are saying about your brand. You want to be reactive to what they're saying. If you look at some of the most viral kind of brand campaigns that have come out, or brand moments, for example, the Stanley Cup.
Oh yes.
Blowing up the car, I think it was. And Stanley, I had to go and listen and see, we're being mentioned about this, and now we need to react in X way that makes sense for our community. And then, of course, being super raw and honest and saying this is not the way to get free stuff from us. I think it's really great community management. You're managing expectations, you're keeping your kind of stakeholders happy, but also creating something of value for your brand because it's memorable. I think it will be a mix of both. I definitely think a mix of both.
Amazing. So, sad to close it off, but I guess with my last question, and considering our topic, for today, which was centered around community-powered brands and how community engagement ensures that your marketing hits home. And I guess, just shining a light on the fact that you are a thought leader, you are a future voice in this topic. What do you think, or what are your top 5 tips for brands who are looking to enhance their community engagement?
Top 5 tips. I think you've got to be really intentional, about building your community. Like I said, it's built, not bought. So really spending that time to understand your people. I think you've got to foster connection and belonging. People want to know that, okay, I'm safe in this space. You've really got to kind of look at being responsive. So knowing that when your people are talking, what are your responses, and what do those things mean? I mentioned it earlier. Close the loop. What is that value proposition that you're that exist, in your community? Are you giving them more resources? Are you driving more kind of ambassadorship of your brand? And then I think lastly, just have fun with it. At the end of the day, community management to me, I feel like is one of the most fun environments to be part of. And so the brand needs to create kind of that fun as well, and let the members know and let the community know that fun is encouraged. It can only do good from there.
Amazing. Tshedza, you have been a boss. You have been just so amazing in not only just sharing insights and your experience, but I think it's important to have that like future outlook and like where are we going, if we're going to talk AI and all of that and like what the future looks like. It's cool and all, but the fact that you were able to bring that back to brands and ensuring that they know how to create a more community powered brand, absolutely invaluable. This is not something that ChatGPT could have generated. So
I hope not.
Any last parting words for us?
No parting words, but yeah, I'm open to chat about community at any time. So thanks for having me. I hope it's not, the last time. And yeah, congrats to you. I'm really excited to see where this podcast is going to go. And yeah, let's go. Let's rock and roll.
Let's go. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Bulbshare Future Voices. We hope you enjoyed the insights and fresh perspectives shared by our guest. Now, if you're ready to dive deeper into the world of consumer insights and co-creation, head over to bulbshare.com to learn more about how we're helping brands connect with real voices from across the globe.